Warner Brothers, I hope you never sleep well. I hope that you executives accidentally step on a pile of Legos on a daily basis. I hope you stub your toe on your way to the office before you single-handedly fumble these iconic franchises even more.
Damn!
Thank God DC Studios is an entity not run by these morons behind the previous era of DC. Now you may be asking, why the hostility? Like, calm down, not even a minute into the video. Over the years, I've seen WB executives make horrendous decisions for DC projects time and time again in almost every medium. Theatrical movies, TV shows, even video games. This probably isn't even the stupidest thing they've done, but learning about what could have been with The Flash probably irritated me more than usual, likely due to the sheer volume of cancelled DC projects over the years. You mean to tell me we could have lived in a timeline where the development studio behind Batman Arkham Origins and Gotham Knights delivered a single-player AAA Flash video game, an actual non-Batman related DC game on a popular DC hero, but it was scrapped. And you might be thinking, well, that's not surprising. Plenty of DC games have been cancelled, like the Damian Wayne Batman game or the original Suicide Squad game from WB Montreal before it was taken over by Rocksteady. But the game wasn't scrapped because of development issues or high budget costs, troubles in figuring out core gameplay mechanics. No. The game was cancelled because the goddamn Flash movie starring everyone's favorite criminal Ezra Miller bombed on the box office, shutting down the idea of a Flash video game in development. You've got to be kidding me.
Each time when I come here, I am abused.
How does that remotely make any sense? Yeah, the movie wasn't great, but there's no way anyone would think its failure would be strong enough to permanently tarnish the Flash as a character, or at least for the foreseeable future. If anything, the movie bombing should provide even more reason to make a video game, to ensure that the Flash can have at least one good adaptation for audiences to latch onto. Audiences aren't dumb enough to be incapable of differentiating different versions of the same character across different mediums. If I had a nickel for every time a Flash video game was in development and got cancelled, I would have two. Bottle Rocket Entertainment in 2008 was working on an open world game on the Flash for the publishing studio Brash Entertainment, but it was canned when Brash Entertainment shut down. The game would have featured Wally West as the Flash protecting Central City and Keystone. It would have had a multiplayer component where you and your friends could play as other speedsters like Jay Garrick, Max Mercury, XS, Jesse Quick, and Superman to race one another or complete objectives. The free roam aspect was a combination of GTA and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. You could help stop things from fires to bank robberies. Alright man, I'm just gonna keep it a buck. Whose toes do I have to suck to get a Flash video game made? Who over at Warner Brothers do I provide a lap dance to in order to play as Barry Allen or Wally West in a solo AAA game? Do some of these higher-ups think that The Flash isn't capable of connecting with audiences? I remember a while back the director of the Flash movie, Andy Muschietti, talked about being informed on the movie's failure being a result of not catering to all four quadrants of moviegoers. A four-quadrant film in the Hollywood industry is something that can cater to all four major demographics of movie watchers. These include men under and over the age of 25 and women over and under that same age. According to Andy Muschietti, he discovered in private conversations that a lot of people don't care about the Flash as a character, and that he fails to cater to the female quadrants of moviegoers.
A bullshit? A bullshit? A bullshit. Bullshit.
Yeah, alright buddy. Then explain to me how the Flash TV show amassed a pretty big audience on the CW and lasted 9 seasons. The show definitely fell off, but that doesn't change the fact that it attracted a lot of viewers during its earlier seasons. The first season of The Flash averaged around 4.6 million viewers per episode. The day the pilot aired on the CW, The Flash was the second most watched series debut in the network's history, only behind The Vampire Diaries. Myself and a bunch of other DC fans grew up with the DCAU, where Justice League and Justice League Unlimited featured Michael Rosenbaum as Wally West Flash, as a founding member of the Justice League. This is the definitive adaptation of the Flash for a lot of people. Looking back on it, I don't think WB ever had that much faith or confidence in the brand appeal of the Flash to begin with theatrically. Instead of making a Flash solo movie centering around the Flash's villains and his supporting cast, the movie was marketed as this giant event film. Hey, here's Michael Keaton's Batman, cause you like Batman, right? Hey, we brought back General Zod from Man of Steel, don't y'all appreciate the nostalgia? Flashpoint adaptation with no reverse Flash in sight has got to be one of the most mind-boggling creative decisions in recent memory. I truly dread the idea of the DCEU movie damaging the Flash's chances of shining in other mediums. James Gunn had mentioned they were holding a beat on Flash at DC Studios when it comes to developing projects with him at center stage. It would suck to see Barry Allen or Wally West Flash suffer the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern effect, where one bad movie basically destroyed any chance of the character getting used in more movies and shows. It also didn't help with how much Ryan Reynolds himself made fun of that movie despite how many years it's been since its release. Barry Allen has had some odd treatment over the years in different DC projects that make him a bit of a jobber or not as competent as he should be, but the character that constantly gets overlooked by general audiences and is crucial to how the Flash is depicted in modern day is Wally West. For many comic readers, Wally West was their Flash, which is wild to think about given how much Barry Allen is seen as the mainstream Flash due to the Arrowverse show. After the death of Barry Allen in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover in 1986, Wally West took over as the primary Flash in DC continuity from that point onward, pretty much all the way up until the New 52 reboot. So he was the Flash for about 20 plus years. Wally West just might be one of, if not the greatest legacy character in all of comics. Before Crisis, he was Kid Flash, mentee to Barry Allen and a member of the Teen Titans, eventually becoming the Flash of post-Crisis DC Comics and being a key figure of the Justice League in several iterations of the team. One of the most compelling aspects of Wally was his growth into the Flash mantle after being Kid Flash for so long, seeing the self-doubt, having to prove himself and to others that he's worthy of following his uncle's footsteps.
When Wally first took on the mantle, he was struggling, that he was never going to be good enough.
He had a little bit of a self-confidence issue. He didn't think he was the best. He's just trying his best.
How does Wally mature into the role? It gave him a confidence as a character by defeating Professor Zoom in a way that Barry Allen never could. And it gave him an expanded role in the DC universe. He became a bedrock character for that line of DC Comics in the 90s.
The thing people need to realize is that many of the elements you associate with the Flash today were created or expanded upon during Wally's time as the primary Flash. Mark Waid created the Speed Force as a means of explaining the Flash's powers, to which Wally was the first speedster to discover the Speed Force's existence.
Something that Barry didn't even realize existed. Where their powers come from. As the writer one day, I was trying to think, okay, what do you experience? What is that like? Something that feeds these speedsters, and from that came the Speed Force.
That they all in some way drew their powers from a kind of extra-dimensional source.
You can imagine the frustrations from longtime comic fans when you have people at DC Comics like Dan DiDio who had a massive hate boner for characters like Wally West. Dan DiDio is a former editor and co-publisher of DC Comics, having been at the company for about 18 years. He was heavily involved in the New 52 reboot, an initiative intended to attract new readers and essentially create a fresh start for DC Comics. Dan DiDio took issue with legacy characters like Wally West because he thought he was never his own character, believing Wally was always going to be subservient to Barry because his origin was determined by him. For heroes like Wally and Dick Grayson, Dan DiDio felt that their presence aged characters like Batman and Barry Allen too much, creating a continuity problem since the legacy heroes were allowed to age, whereas their mentors in the Justice League like Batman and Superman are more or less timeless. He also thought Nightwing was a redundant character who would at some point become older than Batman. DiDio planned to have Nightwing killed off in the Infinite Crisis crossover event in 2005 as a means of bringing the heroes together, but the writer of Infinite Crisis, Jeff Johns, thankfully pushed back on that idea as Dick had plenty of more stories to be told, with Superboy being the hero who ended up dying in that story. Editorial decided to fully bring back Barry Allen after his supposed death in Crisis on Infinite Earths, 23 years later in 2008's Final Crisis, where it was shown Barry was trapped in the Speed Force this whole time. His return was part of a broader initiative to return to the roots of some of DC's iconic characters, paving the way for Barry to become the main Flash again with the New 52 reboot in 2011. Prior to the New 52, the Flash Rebirth sought to firmly reintroduce Barry as a prominent figure of the DC universe, exploring the character's sheer essence and significance over the years. Transitioning to the New 52 reboot, a lot of longtime fans were disgruntled by the handling, or rather erasure, of some key stories and characters from Flash lore that had been established decades prior. It wasn't necessarily that readers disliked Barry Allen, rather it was the issue of completely erasing Wally West from continuity. Longtime Flash readers had grown accustomed to Wally West as the Flash for years in DC stories, and yet he was nowhere in sight in this new continuity. They essentially created a new character with the same name called Wallace West, who experienced none of the previous history of the original Wally West. See, we didn't get rid of Wally West completely, he's still around somewhat.
Who are these niggas?
I cried laughing when I read it.
You know what I'm saying?
Jeff Johns talked about some of the missed opportunities or issues with the New 52 initially, and how the heart of the DCU was missing due to the legacies not having been existed. Some examples included the erasure of the Justice Society from main canon, as well as many prominent relationships. This put things into perspective in the decision of bringing back the OG Wally West in the DC Rebirth relaunch, as the absence of Wally West for about 5 years in DC Comics is what Jeff Johns missed the most, believing Wally West West to be the heartbeat of the missing emotional relationships that had been erased, to remind readers of how important he is. Titans Rebirth retconned it so that the villain Abracadabra cast a spell on Wally West as Kid Flash, causing him to disappear and be cast into the time stream. This made it seem like Wally never existed and all of his friends and loved ones forgot about him, which included the Titans, Barry Allen, and Wally's wife Linda. Inevitably, all of the heroes would regain their memories of Wally as he rejoined the Titans and the DC universe entirely. So now you've got two speedsters running around with the name of Wally West as a means of DC having their cake and eating it too. Over the years, it's been established that Wally West is the fastest speedster in DC, thus being faster than Barry. The reason for this is that Wally is able to understand the spiritual side of the Speed Force rather than just the science of it all. I think a lot of what people associate with Barry Allen as the Flash personality-wise is actually more synonymous with how Wally West was depicted for the longest time. As I stated earlier, one of the most beloved iterations of the Flash is in the Justice League cartoon series. I think this is where a lot of people sort of associated the Flash with having this very light-hearted, quirky personality. That sort of outgoing energy is more applied to Wally West as a character than Barry Allen.
Which is why we decided to make him Wally West and not Barry Allen, just to make him younger and a little bit more Gen Z.
This sort of combination of Wally's personality with the classic Barry Allen Flash look.
You know, he'll just tell you what he's thinking. His personality melded perfectly with the character that we were trying to create.
Bye, Wally. Later, Rick.
Take care.
Later, Margie. Have a good one. Later, Tony.
Why are you here?
Because it's Flash Appreciation Day. My mom's gonna be there. Be great if one of the original 7 made it. The whole league deserves the honor. All of us. Like I said, no biggie.
What time?
You're really coming? You're a stand-up guy, Bats. Don't ever let them call you a crazed loner.
The Flash's comedic timing in the show never came off as annoying to me or something that got old really fast. The difference in his openness compared to other Justice League members paints a clear picture of his warm-hearted nature and how he handles his villains or issues at hand.
You guys please take it down a notch? Let me handle this. You're off your meds, aren't you? You're not well. Listen, James, you're wearing the suit again.
Well, what do you know?
Tell me where those guys went and I promise to come see you in the hospital. As soon as you finish your drink, turn yourself in.
Got me again, Flash.
Depending on what they plan to do with the Flash in the DCU, considering it'll probably be a while after the failure of the DCEU movie, it could be an interesting angle to have Wally West become the Flash of the DCU down the line, just to give the character some justice after so many years. I would be completely okay if they wanted Barry Allen to continue being the mainstream Flash for the next 8 to 10 years, but showcasing the growth of Wally West from Kid Flash to The Flash could help in distancing themselves from the Ezra Miller slop, showcasing Barry mentoring his nephew Wally into becoming a superhero. If Hal Jordan in the upcoming Lanterns TV show being older and mentoring Jon Stewart is of any indication, I could see them doing a similar thing with Barry and Wally. Now, I'm not saying Barry Allen should be as old as a 60-year-old Hal Jordan, but I think it's important to emphasize the legacy aspects of DC, as that's something that hasn't been explored as much in media. As far as we know, Wally West is roaming around as Kid Flash as a member of the Teen Titans if the Creature Commando's future vision is of any indication. Really, one of the only DC projects to emphasize the importance of legacy is Young Justice. I still think they fumbled in not bringing him back from the Speed Force or something along those lines after season 2.
Oh man, Artemis is so gonna kill me for this. Just tell them, okay?
Kid!
Where's Wally?
He wanted me to tell you he loved you.
It's honestly just silly to think about a company being hesitant or questioning the popularity of The Flash, the most iconic speedster in all of fiction. I don't think we're in a state where general audiences lack any interest in seeing the character return in mainstream media, or share the mentality that The Flash can't carry his own franchise. It's just unfortunate that in recent years, the latest seasons of The Flash have been nowhere near as good as the first few, all the way up to the finale, and the DCEU movie failed to meet fan expectations, which is important because these live-action movies often set the standard for how these characters are depicted in future stories. It also didn't help that the universe was already dying and losing fan interest. I promise you, if you can make a good Flash video game, live action, or animated show / movie, it doesn't matter. People will pull up because of its significance on the wider DC universe. It's as simple as that.